So this is a very unusual day. Why? Because we're in it. We've got the opportunity to be fresh and more alive in it. But it goes a little bit beyond that. So the first thing I need to do, because it really doesn't happen very often, I'm really touched by it, and for many different reasons. I would like you to join me in welcoming my youngest son, John, and his wife, Alex, and my daughter, Sandy, my middle child. Yay! It's kind of a command performance, but we'll talk about that later. And thank you to the folks from Westlake. There's also an adoptive daughter who's sitting right down in front. She was my musical director at Westlake Center for Spiritual Living for many years. Sherry Deeds. So what I want to do today, and the topic is called The Shape of Things to Come. And you know where that comes from? Anybody? Oh, good, I can tell you anything. Make it up as I go along. It's actually from a book that was written in 1933 by H.G. Wells, and it was a book predicting the future. He predicted the future from 1933 through 2106. And the culmination of it, basically, because things weren't working at different stages of development, they created a state government that was the manager of everyone and everything, but we won't go there. So I want to talk about where you are in your current stage of evolution, individually and obviously as a collective community. So the shape of things to come, you know and I know, starts right here and right now with what we're entertaining, what we're engaging in within our own consciousness, consciously and subconsciously. And so you've got a rich heritage. You've had two fantastic leaders, one of whom it was like shades of the past. Dr. Dennis Merrick Jones and I have been prayer partners since he came to see me, and I went to Westlake. So guess who called me this morning? Dr. D said, come on, we've got to get you prayed up. So the opportunity is always, so we know how it goes. How many of you have been here since the earliest stages of Dr. Dennis and the startup?
How that came left and came back.
Yes, yes. And so, and how many of you just came around the time that Dr. Jim came? Okay, so you've got a routine. What you've known is based on your past experience. And I want us to relate this personally because that's where it has to start. Nothing ever changes without the initial change of a state of mind, a state of consciousness within the self, the only self we really know, and yet we know everyone according to how we know the self that we are. So if in the process we go about business as usual, then we know we'll have the exact same result. So we have work to do. While at this point of beginning, that brink of the as yet unknown, there's a tendency to, again, rely on the things that your subconscious mind has already committed to habit, to memory. And yet the very options that you're faced with creatively are saying, what do you want? Because the shape of things to come is determined by the way you're shaping and forming your own thoughts and beliefs right here and right now. So here is your assignment. This is the work that you are to do. It's that mechanical thing with them. May I have the first slide? Thank you. Okay, so here we go. We are in this world with purpose. We are here because we have unfinished business. We are here to come to terms with our past actions, to learn to appropriately relate to the world, to render useful service to the planet, to experience higher knowledge, and to awaken to God realization. Piece of cake, right? Let's break it down. So we do have a purpose. There is something that wants to happen, as we shared in the meditation, that can only happen in a new, fresh, enlivened way if you and I provide ourselves, our consciousness, as the vehicle through which this something occurs. And your purpose and my purpose is the same purpose. It's to reveal more and more of our divine nature. My purpose is to reveal more and more of my divine nature. Let's say that. My purpose is to reveal more and more of my divine nature. So what's a good way to go about that? Number one item, we are here to come to terms with unfinished business that is still lurking. Oh, why did Dr. Dennis leave? Oh my God, why did Dr. Jim leave? Why do people come and people go? I just saw this person here last week. Now they're gone. Oh, look at the empty seats. Oh, look at the empty offertory. Oh me, oh my. Good days, bad days. Ups and downs. That's the nature of life. But the consistency with which we can carry forward in a more graceful, mindful manner has to begin with, let me get clean and free. Let me forgive what needs to be forgiven. Let me make peace with and be grateful for the past, and yet let me be willing to release it, to bless it and praise it and give thanks for it and use it as a stepping stone. One of the best quotations, which I thought about after these went in, is a quotation relating to this from Thomas Trord. Emmy Trord lovers in the group? Okay, so Thomas Trord said, and I'm going to be paraphrasing this, he talked about the fact that you and I are centers of divine operation. Each one of us is a center of divine operation, and that divine operation is created exclusively for fuller expression and for creating something new. And therefore, he said, we're not to be limited by the past, because this something new is established already in mind to go beyond the past and not be limited by the past, and yet it emerges from the past, because there is nothing separate. We don't pluck things out of a void without them having come from a certain place and are the continuum with which something goes on. So this divine center of infinite intelligence and divine operation that you and I are is extracting the legacy, the gifts of what has already been established through your former ministers and the shapes those ministries took. And now is not limited by any of that, but now goes beyond it with advanced thinking, so that something new emerges. And that requires that we have to make peace with any and all unfinished business. We have to do the traditional work that we've been taught to do by teachers of all ages and times. Forgive, forget, give up your reluctance to surrender, and just make peace with what is. There's nothing more precious than what is right here and right now. Give up control, because the other danger, it says here, we come to terms with the past actions. What you and I did was fine, but we're not here to rest on our laurels. That just isn't good enough. That continuation of extracting the good and letting something new emerge out of it requires that we learn to appropriately relate to the world as it is now. The world is not the way it was 10, 20, 15 minutes ago, much less 10, 15, 20 years ago. Ministry is not the same. The focal point of what it takes to evolve into a full house, pretty much just like this, and to maintain the consistency of drawing people requires a whole new way of communicating. And so to relate to the world means I've got to start communicating at its level. No, I'm not tweeting, I'm not on Instagram. I may text, but it's still on my little Verizon flip open So that's why it's such fun, because I get garbled messages when it's like, it's saying, can't take anymore, relax. And yet this is the world that is now tuned in to what's happening. So if I come to terms with a level of communication, but beyond that, when you sit in your board meetings, when you sit today in your annual meeting, for every individual there's an opinion. And for every opinion, it truly does represent at some level a personal agenda. Well, I'd like it if. Why don't we have a woman as a minister for a change? Why don't we have a couple as ministers for a change? No, why don't we keep to that male energy? Men bring in men. Let's keep that going, said the single woman. So, to be able to relate in a way that is understandable, and certainly within the closer quarters of your selection committee, absolute meticulous honesty, where everyone's opinion is listened to, respected, the differences are acknowledged, and yet you're always looking for not my way or your way, and not the highway either. You're looking for something greater. It's something that emerges built on what you think, what I think, what's been thought already, and yet it proceeds in a forward direction. To awaken, obviously, that's the purpose. When I'm in my state of mindful, conscious awareness of my oneness with the infinite intelligence of the universe, then I am prone to letting that divine idea reveal itself. That's why what's required, spiritual practices. Beef it up on your prayer power, because every answer that you think you've got handled in terms of, I know this is the way it should look, this is the way it'll all format. You know, there's a process involved. The greater organization requires the paperwork and all of the requirements that you're offering, so someone can see if what they're offering is a match. And yet it all starts with what you're coming from, not necessarily what you're praying to get ever, but more of what is emerging from me? What's the consciousness with which I'm putting this out? Because the shape of things to come, you're going to call forth exactly who's right for you. And when they get here, it's like, that's it, voila. My consciousness has demonstrated itself in this perfect way of creating a new model for the way I live and a new model for ministry itself. And that comes from spiritual practices which prompt us to awaken to God realization. So in the journey, the preparation, you know, it's like preparing a huge party and some of the guests you don't know. And in that process, you want your home, inwardly and outwardly, to be representative of who you are, of what you are offering. It's a two-way street. And in that process, we want to be able to grow ourselves into a way that is not, if any of you have read or worked with the Course in Miracles at all, there's a statement they refer to quite a lot, and it's called the self-initiating mind. The self-initiating mind is the human linear way of thinking, which says, got it handled, know just who I want and what they look like and what they're going to be saying and how they're going to be saying it. Why? Again, because that's following the human agenda. I'm fulfilling my own needs and satisfaction here. I'm not really looking to the bigger picture. Maybe believe I clip to the next slide. Thank you. So the next picture describes, just as our present is the result of our past, so our future will be the result of our present. Every minute, every day, we are weaving threads that will make the cloth of the future. So if I'm doing it from simply the heads up and from imposing my familiar conditioned perceptions and beliefs, then I can only expect more of the same. You have such a creative, exciting opportunity. And I personally, I feel that you feel that. Do you feel that? Yes. That you're excited about what is available. And in that process, to again always see the continuity. It's honoring the present because it's born out of the past, but it's not limited by the past as it eases its way into the future. Every moment, every thread that you weave in the way you handle yourself, in the way that what you offer the world is the greatest gift because you are a beneficent presence. You're offering the world the realization I'm a conscious being. And I know that right where I am, my attitude, my perception of life becomes the very backdrop and foreground for everything that's going to emerge. So the forecast has been for the rains. The rains are coming. And my car was dirty. So the metaphor for life, well, it's dirty, it's going to rain, what's the point in getting it clean? I said, no, I want my car clean. I want a great, fantastic new ministry to evolve with a great, fantastic minister or ministers. That's the consciousness I decree and declare, and my word is the law of enforcement. You know, that's what Holmes used to say. My word is the law of enforcement of the divine creative idea that I set in motion. So I go to one of the car washes in my vicinity right on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and obviously they didn't share my beliefs, they were closed. Traveled down the road to another, it was open. There was only one other person there. So I go through, pay, and sit down, and I look at this gal, she's sitting with her baseball cap and warm coat on, and I said to her, I guess we're the only optimists in town. And she said, well, I believe that consciousness is the beginning of everything. Do you know what I mean? Oh, good one, yes. So I said, well, what do you understand that to mean? She said, everything is a perception. It's my state of awareness. I can come from a darkened place and feel there's no light here, there's no sun. Why am I bothering? The car is dirty, let it get even dirtier. Or I come to the realization what I desire is to always maintain a clean mind and clean things around me. The smoke is rising in commemoration. So she says to me, for example, she said, let me give you an example how you can always find the good. She said, right at the entrance of my home, I live out more or less on a ranch, and at the entrance is the mailbox, but above the mailbox I've got a huge sign that says, welcome. It's decorative and it's beautiful, it's got flowers. Welcome. She said, I went out there the other day and she said, I never saw so much bird poop all over it as that. She said, I had a chuckle. I went, yeah? She goes, yeah. I had a chuckle because a welcome sign means welcome. It doesn't mean I lay down the conditions. Keep it clean, keep it orderly, come when the house is all in shape. It's like anything that shows up in response to my welcome. I've got to know I called for it. Therefore, I've got to bless it and give thanks for it and see the good of it. We had unquestionably the best conversation. And the interesting thing is, I said, so do you follow a spiritual path or a faith tradition of any kind? She says, no, I've always lived this way. And I thought to myself, and I said, you know, it's so funny. Many of us study laboriously, consistently. We pray and we read and we listen and we attend webinars until they're coming out of our eyes. And always looking for that thing which in other people can and does emerge spontaneously out of a clear, certain knowingness. How wonderful. And yet here we are together, enjoying and sharing that one fundamental basic truth. Okay, I gotta do that clicker. I'm just insistent upon it. So on the next slide you will see that any group that we belong to always also has a collective consciousness. Groups tend to devolve or become stagnant if there are no new ideas infused into them. The tendency is to keep things the same, or even to go back to earlier times if there is not some visionary leadership. However, we assume leadership in the moment we introduce bold new concepts that could evolve some creative energy into the mix. That's my friend and colleague, Dr. Carol Carnes. And we started ministry together in different places, and we've been together a long time. And she has a wonderful daily inspirational writing. So if we, and what we bring to the party is the determination for what's going to be fed and who's going to eat at the party and how the meal will be digested, then it really behooves us to be very certain that I'm not about the business of devolving. I'm about the business of evolving. Exactly. And evolving means, again, that I am a center of divine operation, drawing from the past and yet going beyond the past, while at the same time drawing what has already been produced from the past into my present and my future. That's why I do strongly feel the benefit of the ongoing prayer, of having that knowingness that on your behalf, you are not only praying for yourself, you're doing it for everyone, to continue to lift the consciousness into higher dimensional living, so that what truly is in the mind of God is now known by you, because you're one in the mind of God. You know, we're all in this field of unlimited divine potentiality, that one quantum field that's been related to scientifically. And because we're one in it, what is known in one place can be known by everyone in the field. It's such a remarkable idea that I think part of the finite mind, linearly speaking, goes, whoosh, what is that about? I don't get that. And it'll come back, and we'll learn it again and relearn it at a deeper and deeper level. But I know that if there is a tendency to go the safe route, to do what's familiar, it works only because it's known how to work, and it will create the same thing. I've shared very often when I left ministry at Westlake, which would now be coming into 6 years ago, I knew with every fiber of my being that although I wanted the form and shape of ministry to change, my urge was to give up the everyday management and operation and visioning for a growing establishment. I wasn't doing myself or anyone else any longer any good, because that desire had left me. I had done that in Canada, and I did it here in the States. And it sounds very international, does it? Yeah, I did that in Canada, did that in the States. Next week, Europe. Not a bad idea at all. So in that process, I simply continued to reinforce in the mind that my ministry will never end. I will continue to be doing this work. You know, I have a friend of mine at the Westlake who kids me and says, yeah, they'll be dragging you off and you'll still be saying, God is the one and only power. It lives eternally. Catch you on the next dimension. Why not? So that's by way of saying why this is a command performance, because I share something with John Newell. John, are you here today? So what do we share together, John? It's our birthday. So that's it. That's it. So if there's a birthing, not just today, there's a birthing every minute of every hour of every day. And out of that birthing, it's odd to say it, but we could give birth to a stillborn, which has already happened and lived and goes on at a different level of life, or I can truly emerge as something that is amazing. I was given in December a huge potted plant, except there was no plant. What it was were two bulbs, two amaryllis bulbs. Anybody know the amaryllis? And since December, I have been patiently tending, not overwatering, just keeping moist, to indirect lighting. See, I've got the whole scenario. And the impatience with which I have found my humanists, like, come on, give me a little something here. Give me a clue that you're alive. That's what life is saying. It's like, come on, give me a clue you're alive. I don't care that you're 50, 60, 70, 80, some. I don't care about any of that because I don't go by the number. I don't go by the quantity. I go by the quality. What's the essence? What's the energy that you're feeding me? Because I'll give it right back to you. Ernest Holmes said, the law of mind responds by corresponding. You give it what you got, and it gets it and gives it right back to you so that you get what you got. Would you say that with me? So in that process, finally, the little bulb started coming up with just a little shoot. And gradually, I'm talking December here, you guys, finally now the stem grew to about like 15 inches. The flower, there's two coming out of that one stem. The flower is the most extraordinary, big, leafed, with little tendrils like in the center, orange, the brightest, most beautiful orange. And then the other one, its partner, came out. And now I see other ones that are starting to emerge. Now, if I can get this excited over a bulb, you know darn well I'm pretty excited about life, about my potential, your potential, and the potential for this creative environment, this spiritual community, this which has drawn every one of you here for a specific purpose. A purpose that says, I'm here to reveal more of God. Obviously, when I'm doing it in similar company, it will happen more effectively, not just for myself, because what did the teachings of the Christ say? As I am lifted, draw all others unto me. The same is true in reverse. If I'm down and I'm out and I'm dark and I don't get my car washed just because they predict rain, then they close down the car wash. And there's only one other person, it's the one that I go, because we're yet not mixing in 100% people who believe this kind of thinking, that for every action you take, there is an inevitable, perfect reaction, that a sequence of thinking, of feeling, and believing produces a consequence. As ye sow, so shall you reap. Last slide is coming up by means of her. Okay, Ernest Holmes said, we are a part of the evolution of human destiny. We are a part of the unfoldment of the divine intelligence in human affairs. It has reached the point of conscious and deliberate cooperation with the principle of evolution and with the out-push of the creative urge of the spirit on this planet. So if we are part of something that it's not enough any longer for us to just evolve in our small microcosmic universe, it's time to realize the universe itself wants to evolve by means of my cooperative availability to say, yes, that which you have for me, I want to receive. I want to listen to the divine wisdom. I want to be available to know that every move I make is divinely, consciously inspired and directed by the one mind that is fully operative in and through and as me and through and in and as everyone else. And how do I know this? Because we're all here. We're all sharing in that field. So the field is ripe with promise, and it is asking of each and every one of you, of us, to continue to do the work spiritually, individually, that truly creates a collective environment of the most magnificent new form, shape, of ministry. Why? Because it's the shape of the things that come out of your consciousness of what you know right here and right now, and that's the way it really is.